There was a time when fantasy meant something very specific. You walked through a forest, and the light broke golden through ancient trees. A village sat at the edge of a river, smoke rising from chimneys, a blacksmith hammering iron. You didn't know what lay beyond the next hill, but you knew it was dangerous, and you knew it was yours to discover. Dragons circled distant peaks. Sorcerers whispered in towers. Warriors, hunters, thieves, all sharing the same mud-caked roads through a world that felt older than any one of them. Elves, goblins, giants, orcs, wizards. Kingdoms at war, taverns full of rumors. The quaint medieval life humming underneath the epic. That was Western high fantasy. And for a generation of players, that feeling was formative. It was an invitation. Come, adventure. This world is alive, and it does not care how small you are. And then, somewhere along the way, we stopped seeing it. Not open worlds, we have plenty of those. Assassin's Creed gave us historical tourism. Ghost of Tsushima gave us postcard beauty. Elden Ring gave us myth drenched in solitude and ruin. All brilliant, all massive. We still get fantasy, but we rarely get this kind of fantasy anymore. Not the warm, lived-in kind. Not the kind where daily life and epic adventure exist side by side. Where the dragon on the mountain and the baker in the village are part of the same living fabric. Not at this scale. Not in a single-player game. Skyrim was 2011. World of Warcraft is an MMO. And in the AAA single-player space, that specific combination has been absent for a very long time. So when Pearl Abyss released the final entry in their Crimson Desert Features series, it caught my attention. Because this one wasn't about combat or story. It was about the layer that makes both of those things matter. The daily life between the battles. The quiet hours that turn a map into a home. The part of high fantasy that modern AAA gaming rarely even aims for anymore. When was the last time a single-player game tried to simulate what it feels like to live in a fantasy world? Not just fight through one, live in one. Some people look at that ambition and ask whether a game can do too much. I think the better question is, when did we stop expecting games to try? And what they're showing here feels like a game built on the shoulders of giants, drawing from MMOs, Red Dead, the best sandboxes, reaching for something we haven't had in a very long time. In our last video, we explored Crimson Desert's open world through its lore, factions, and story. If you haven't seen it, I'd recommend checking that out. But this final features overview, Life in Pywel, takes us somewhere different. This is our first real look at how this open world actually works day to day. Camp management, companion dispatching, professions, town life, crafting, law and consequence. The full picture of what you'll spend your time doing in this world. What struck me most was the picture that forms when you look at all of them together. It starts with the Greymane camp, a stretch of land at the edge of Hernand, where the remnants of a faction that lost everything have gathered to begin again. You pour resources into this place. A cooking fire becomes a kitchen, a bare plot becomes a farm. Through patience and labor, a refugee's foothold becomes a home. Now, base building in an open world, or RPG, or adventure game, whatever label you prefer, this concept has been done before. Red Dead Redemption 2 had it. Plenty of survival games have it. The mechanic alone is nothing revolutionary. But what makes it resonate every single time it's done well is the story underneath. A displaced people, a new fire lit in unfamiliar ground. On this rock, we begin again. On top of the base building, you have the companion system. Your Greymane allies find their way back to you over time. Some on the road, others drawn by rumor. They settle into the camp, take on roles, and become functional. The feature overview shows this in action. You dispatch companions on missions across the world, and they return with currency, wood, or crafting materials. They can even be sent to weaken enemy strongholds while you're occupied elsewhere. They'll also join you in larger battle set pieces, fighting alongside you when the stakes are high. Now, honestly, this feature is nothing new either. This is the WoW mission table, the Black Desert Worker node system. Assassin's Creed had versions of this. You could even argue it feels like a mobile game mechanic on paper. But here's where I'll show my bias. I'm an MMO fan at heart, and I genuinely enjoy these systems. In WoW, in BDO, in Endfield, the feeling that you're still progressing, even when you step away, that the world keeps moving without you, that's something I've always found compelling. Whether it feels satisfying in Crimson Desert will depend entirely on execution. If the dispatch loop connects meaningfully to camp progression, to crafting, to the broader open world experience, it could be the thing that gives this world its rhythm. The MMO DNA shows up again in the side activities: cooking, fishing, hunting, farming, mining, gathering, alchemy. The feature overview runs through all of these, and if you've lived inside any MMO, you recognize the list immediately. And once again, none of this is new on its own. What matters is whether they connect. Does cooking fuel combat? Does gathering fuel crafting? Does the whole loop breathe together, accessible enough to learn in an afternoon, deep enough to reward you for months? When systems talk to each other, daily life stops feeling like a chore and starts feeling like living. When they exist in isolation, disconnected from the core experience, you get checkboxes, ticked and forgotten. Now, I've seen the criticism already. Some outlets look at a game attempting this many systems and immediately say, by trying to do too much, they risk achieving nothing. I've heard the same line applied to Where Winds Meet. You could apply it to any ambitious project and sound like you're saying something. But that critique provides no actual insight. It's a sentence that sounds smart and means nothing. The core of this feature video is clear. Crimson Desert's open world is built around immersion. And if you want immersion, these systems matter. They have to be deep, believable, on theme, and enjoyable. The real risk here was never attempting too much. The real risk would have been playing it safe. And if something doesn't land, it can be patched. But the ambition to attempt it, that's worth respecting. And by the looks of it, they're taking it seriously. Because here's why this matters beyond the mechanics. What made those classic fantasy worlds feel complete was never just the dragons. It was the other hours. Fishing by a lake as the sun dipped below the tree line. The pride of wearing armor you forged yourself. The quaint, unhurried medieval rhythm underneath all the heroism. That texture is what separated a world you passed through from a world you inhabited. And here's the design truth most open worlds miss. Routine is what makes a world feel real. The daily rhythms that keep pulling you back until the place stops feeling like a game and starts feeling like somewhere you know. You wander into villages, market towns, walled cities where the streets are narrow and commerce fills the air. The shops are there, the infrastructure is there. But what held my attention was the people. The overview showcases NPCs with their own small burdens. A farmer needs protection from bandits. A merchant needs goods delivered across a dangerous road. A parent has lost someone. These aren't world-ending quests. They're human-scale problems. And their purpose is clear. Settlements should feel like places where life was happening long before you arrived. The rumors at the tavern. The blacksmith who barely looks up because he's carrying his own grief. That's what made you feel like an adventurer instead of a customer. Then there's the law. Cause harm and the settlement remembers. Guards draw steel. Push far enough and you end up in jail. The world watching. The world keeping score. The best fantasy open worlds always had rules and real consequences when you broke them. If Crimson Desert achieves that reactivity, every town becomes something you navigate, not just pass through. An open world that remembers how you treated it. So, those are the systems. The camp, the companions, the professions, the towns, the consequences. But all of those live inside something larger. And this is where Crimson Desert's open world starts to reveal what it actually is. Desert regions stretching gold to the horizon. Snow-capped mountains bruised with cloud. Cities built into cliffsides. The feature overview flashes through all of this, and there's a moment where you fly, then drop directly onto the back of your horse. The world feels enormous. But scale is not what stopped me. What stopped me is that this world has color. Graphically, yes, it's stunning. But I mean something deeper, tonally, spiritually. Inns and taverns and medieval market squares where life moves at its own pace. Orcs and dragons and sorcery woven into daily existence as texture, as fabric. Hunters stalking prey through quiet forests, while a sorcerer lights up a battlefield 2 hills over. Warriors, thieves, rangers, wizards, all sharing the same roads. The Witcher gave us fantasy, but political, grounded, morally grey. Elden Ring reached for something mythic, but kept it desolate by design. What Crimson Desert is reaching for feels warmer than either, and that tonal difference matters as a design philosophy. Modern fantasy AAA has gravitated toward darkness because grit signals seriousness. But somewhere in that migration, the genre lost the sense that a fantasy world could be a place you want to be. Crimson Desert seems to be making a deliberate choice to go the other direction. Warm, inviting, a world that wants to welcome you before it challenges you. Deep character customization reinforces it. Face sculpting, tattoos, armor dyes brewed through alchemy. Black Desert's pedigree showing through. And customization in a high fantasy world carries real weight. It's identity. The difference between a preset protagonist and your version of a fantasy hero. A hero in a world that still believes in heroes. You can tell this game stands on the shoulders of giants. MMO world philosophy, Red Dead Redemption's intimacy, the systemic depth of the best sandboxes, Skyrim's exploration wonder. Pearl Abyss wears their influences openly. They're honoring them. Here's what I believe Pearl Abyss is reaching for. A decade of building one of the most systemically complex MMOs in the genre taught them how to make worlds that breathe. And now they're channeling all of it into a single-player experience, wrapped inside a fantasy identity that AAA gaming has quietly walked away from. Whether they execute it is the question. It always is. But what this final features overview tells me, this quiet video about cooking at a campfire, tending a farm, sending companions into the wild, walking through medieval towns where people carry their own small stories, is that Crimson Desert has its sights set on something far more ambitious than another beautiful action game with a pretty map. They're trying to bring back a fantasy, the one with dragons on the horizon and smoke rising from the village below, where warriors and sorcerers share the same tavern, and the ale is warm and the road ahead is long. The one a generation of players grew up inside, and that hasn't had a proper home in years. And if they pull it off, this might be where that fantasy lives again.